Rain always made the lobby smell like bleach and cheap perfume, and on that Friday dawn, Amira Cole had already cleaned the counter 3 times just to stay awake. She needed that shift, needed all the shifts. Rent would be late in 5 days, and her 17-year-old brother had eaten plain rice for the 3rd consecutive night. Still, when the elevator opened at 2:12 a.m. and a new janitor pushed a maintenance cart into the lobby, she smiled at him, a tired but sincere smile. "First night?" Amira asked. The man slowly lifted his face. He was handsome in a quiet way, with dark eyes that observed everything and a body that seemed too strong for someone who supposedly cleaned floors. But he wore rubber gloves and a wrinkled grey uniform. Nothing about him betrayed who he really was. "Yes," he replied. "First night." She nodded, rubbing her temples. "Welcome to the building. Nobody sees us here," she said, while organizing papers on the counter. "Rich people don't notice who keeps places running. We only exist when something goes wrong." He stopped, froze, didn't breathe for several seconds. Those words, simple, spoken without intention, pierced through his defenses like a blade, because he was exactly the type of man she was talking about. Welcome to Korean Mafia Lovers. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. His name was Han Ji-seok, head of the city's most influential criminal organization. He was infiltrating as a janitor because there was a traitor within the Mafia itself, someone intelligent, close, and too dangerous to be investigated formally. Ji-seok expected contempt, expected arrogance, expected poor employees to be invisible as they always were in his world. But Amira wasn't invisible. And she seemed to see the world, including him, with cruel precision. "Do you think nobody sees you?" he asked, trying not to reveal the impact. She gave a dry laugh. "I've always been other people's shadow. I don't expect to be noticed anymore. I just want to survive this month." Ji-seok felt his chest tighten. There, in a casual phrase, she described the life he himself had forgotten how to live. In the following days, he remained disguised, pushing cleaning carts, changing light bulbs, pretending to be someone without power. And whenever he arrived at the lobby, there was Amira, reorganizing folders, taking messages, solving problems that weren't hers. And always with that resilient calm that hid deep fractures. She wasn't afraid of him, wasn't interested in him, had no filter. And that completely disarmed him. The building housed 3 major corporations, a pharmaceutical company on floors 15-20, a tech startup occupying floors 8 to 12, and a financial consulting firm that took up the top 5 floors. Each company had their own security protocols, but the night shift was minimal. Just Amira at reception, 2 security guards who rotated between floors, and maintenance staff. Ji-seok had chosen this building specifically because his organization had business dealings with the pharmaceutical company. Legal dealings mostly. They provided security for high-value shipments. But someone had been leaking information about those shipments, and 3 had been hijacked in the past month. The traitor knew his patterns, his security details, his safe houses. It had to be someone from his inner circle. "You watch too much," she said one dawn, crossing her arms. "New janitors don't look around like that. Usually they just want to leave quickly." He swallowed hard. "I just find the building interesting." "And I think you're strange," she shrugged. "But at least you're polite. Half the executives here don't even know how to say good morning." Behind his disguise, Ji-seok felt a pang of shame. She was talking about his world, his culture, his leadership, and she had no idea. During his 3rd night, he noticed her routine more carefully. Amira arrived at 10 p.m. and worked until 6 a.m. She brought dinner in a small plastic container, usually rice with vegetables, sometimes just bread. She never bought coffee from the expensive machine in the lobby, instead drinking water from a thermos she refilled in the bathroom. Her uniform was clean but worn. The fabric had been washed so many times it had lost its original color. Her shoes were practical, with small tears she'd repaired with clear tape, but her posture was always straight, her voice always professional, her smile always genuine when someone needed help. She treated everyone the same way, from the CEO who occasionally worked late to the delivery drivers who brought packages after hours. No judgment, no hierarchy in her kindness. It was something Ji-seok had never seen in his world. "Why do you work nights?" he asked while emptying trash cans near her desk. Better pay differential, she said without looking up from her computer. And my brother can stay home alone at night. During the day I need to be there when he gets back from school. Just you and your brother? She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Our parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. Marcus was 15, I was 23. The state wanted to put him in foster care, but I fought for custody. She resumed typing. Some fights are worth everything. Ji-seok felt something shift in his chest. In his world, family loyalty was currency, but it was also strategy. What Amira described was pure sacrifice without expectation of return. That must be difficult, he said. Everything worthwhile is difficult. She glanced at him. But Marcus is smart. He'll get a scholarship, go to college, become something better than this. That's what matters. And what about you? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'll figure it out after he's settled. That night, Ji-seok made a decision that would have shocked his lieutenants. Instead of returning to his penthouse, he drove to the neighborhood where Amira lived. It was a 40-minute drive from the corporate district, through areas that got progressively more run down. The building was old but maintained, with security bars on the windows and a broken intercom system. He sat in his car, watching the early morning routine of a working-class neighborhood. People heading to early shifts, children walking to school, elderly residents sitting on stoops despite the cold. It was a world that existed parallel to his, invisible to the corporate towers and private clubs where he conducted business. He thought about Amira walking these streets every day, taking 2 buses to reach the building where she worked nights. Thought about her brother eating plain rice while she smiled at strangers who didn't know her name. His phone buzzed, a text from his second-in-command. Any progress on the leak? Ji-seok stared at the message for a long time before responding. Still investigating. But for the first time in years, the investigation felt less important than the person he was supposed to be protecting himself from. Over the next few days, Ji-seok found himself paying attention to details he'd never noticed before. The way Amira's shoulders tensed when certain executives walked by, men who looked at her like she was furniture. The way she quietly helped confused delivery drivers find the right floors, even though it wasn't her job. The way she kept a small photo of her and Marcus taped to the edge of her computer monitor. In that photo, they were both laughing at something off camera. Amira looked younger, less tired, her smile bright and unguarded. Marcus had his arm around her shoulders, and there was something in their posture that spoke of absolute trust. That's a good picture, Ji-seok said one night, nodding toward the photo. Last Christmas, Amira said, following his gaze, Marcus got accepted to a summer program for gifted students. Full scholarship. We celebrated at this little diner that gives free pie on holidays. He looks happy. He is. Despite everything, he's still just a kid who gets excited about science projects and terrible movies. She touched the edge of the photo gently. I want to keep him that way as long as possible. You're a good sister. I'm all he has, she said simply. So I have to be enough. The weight of that responsibility, carrying an entire family's future on her shoulders while working minimum wage, hit Ji-seok like a physical blow. In his world, power came from controlling others. In hers, it came from protecting them. What did you want to be, Dizzy asked. Before you had to take care of everything. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. A teacher, she said finally. Elementary school. I wanted to work with kids who needed extra help, you know. The ones who get overlooked because they don't fit the standard mold. You still could. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what time, what money? I'm 25 years old and I've never even been on a real date because I work 60 hours a week just to keep us afloat. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. I'm sorry, Ji-seok said. Don't be sorry. Just don't pretend the world is fair. She looked at him directly. You seem like a decent guy, but you're still just passing through. Tomorrow, next week, next month, you'll move on to something better. That's how it works for people like you. People like me. People who have choices. Her words cut deeper than she could know, because she was right. He did have choices. More choices than almost anyone in the city. He could change her life with a phone call, solve her problems with money that meant nothing to him. But he was here under false pretenses, investigating a threat to his criminal empire, while she worked herself to exhaustion just to survive. The guilt was becoming unbearable. On the 4th night, everything changed. A group of men entered the building through the service entrance using fake badges. They looked like delivery workers, but moved with military precision. Amira noticed first, not by their appearance but by their posture. Regular people carry boxes carefully. Criminals carry boxes like they're carrying weapons. She pressed the security button on the counter. Nothing happened. System disabled. Someone from inside had sabotaged it. A traitor. Her eyes met Jiseok's at that exact moment. He understood everything. She understood everything. And before he could take a step, Amira grabbed his arm. "Don't go left," she whispered. "They're blocking the corridor. The elevator will be their second entry point." "How do you know this?" Jiseok asked. "Because I grew up surrounded by men like that." She took a deep breath. "My mother always said, where you see three walking together and none looking back, there's planned violence." He felt the truth in her words. The men moved through the lobby with practiced efficiency. There were 6 of them dressed in matching uniforms from a legitimate delivery company. But their boots were military grade, their movements too coordinated, their eyes scanning for threats rather than looking for package recipients. Jiseok recognized the tactical formation. These weren't street thugs or opportunistic criminals. This was a professional hit squad. "You need to run," he said, "now. And leave the civilian employees to die?" She lifted her chin. "I don't abandon anyone." His heart stopped for an instant. She wasn't elite, wasn't trained, wasn't criminal, but she had more courage than many generals he led. The invaders entered the reception area from the side, knocking down cameras and beginning their sweep. Amira ran to the file room, pushed the employees inside, and locked the door from within, using a manual lock that almost nobody knew existed. She had learned the trick fixing that door herself 2 weeks earlier. Jiseok followed her, still pretending to be a janitor, but unable to hide his war instincts. Inside the file room were 3 other employees: Janet from accounting, who had stayed late to finish monthly reports, Carlos, a security guard who had been making his rounds, and David, an IT technician who was updating systems overnight. "What's happening?" Janet whispered, her voice shaking. "Armed intruders," Amira said calmly. "Stay quiet, stay low, and do exactly what I say." Jiseok watched her take control of the situation with natural authority. She positioned people away from the door, found emergency flashlights in a supply cabinet, and checked that everyone had their phones to call for help once it was safe. "They don't want hostages," he analyzed the movement through the frosted glass. "They want to kill a single target." Amira approached him. "Who?" He hesitated. She crossed her arms. "Tell me. Now." He took a deep breath, knowing his entire life would change by saying this. "Me." She blinked. "The janitor?" "I'm not a janitor." He removed his gloves. His posture changed, his eyes hardened. And for the first time, Amira saw who he really was. "My name is Han Jiseok." His voice low, firm. "And someone within my own organization wants to see me dead." The other employees stared in shock, but Amira just closed her eyes for a moment. "Of course, just my luck." When she reopened them, however, there was no panic there. There was decision. "Then we'll survive this together," she said, "but you only get out of here alive if you listen to me." He frowned. "Listen to you," she pointed to the corridor. "Your men would kill half the people here without noticing. I won't. I know every corner of this building, every route, every weakness. You want to live? Follow me." And he followed. A mafia boss following a poor receptionist. The world was turned upside down, and yet it felt exactly right. Amira moved through the building like she owned it, leading them through maintenance corridors and service areas that even the security team didn't patrol regularly. She knew which doors were always unlocked, which cameras had blind spots, which routes would keep them away from the main search areas. "How do you know all this?" Jiseok whispered as they crept through a storage area filled with office supplies. "I've been here for 8 months, she replied quietly. "When you work nights, you notice things. Plus, I read the building schematics when I started. I like to know my environment. Most people don't read building schematics. Most people don't grow up in neighborhoods where knowing all the exits can save your life." They could hear the hit squad moving through the building systematically, checking each floor. Professional voices coordinating through radio communication. These men were experienced, well-funded, and thorough. "They're using military-grade equipment," Jiseok observed, listening to the radio chatter. Whoever hired them has serious resources. Someone from your organization? Has to be. Only 5 people knew I was investigating here personally. The weight of that betrayal settled over him. Someone he trusted completely had sold him out. Someone who knew his methods, his safe houses, his security protocols. Then one of those 5 people wants you dead, Amira said matter-of-factly. Yes. Why? Jesiok considered the question. In his world, betrayal usually came down to 3 things: money, power, or revenge. Probably power, he said. Someone who thinks they can run things better than I can. Can they? The question caught him off guard. What? Can they run things better? Are you a good leader? No one had ever asked him that question so directly. In his world, leadership was assumed, not questioned. You led through fear and control, not through competence or wisdom. I don't know, he admitted. Well, that's honest at least. They reached a junction where they could go 3 different directions: toward the parking garage, toward the main stairwell, or toward the old service elevator that connected to the building's original freight system. Which way? He asked. Amira listened carefully to the sounds echoing through the building. They're expecting us to go for obvious exits, she said. Parking garage will be covered. Main stairs too, but there's a 4th option they probably don't know about. She led him to what looked like a supply closet, but when she opened it, there was a narrow ladder leading upward. This connects to the old pneumatic tube system, she explained. The building used to use it for document delivery between floors. It's been abandoned for years, but the passages are still there. How do you know about this? I had to retrieve a lost package from up there last month. Took me 2 hours to figure out the system. As they climbed the narrow ladder, Jesiok realized something that shook him. Amira knew this building better than his own security team knew their safe houses. She understood its weaknesses, its hidden passages, its forgotten systems. She had the mind of a strategist, the instincts of a survivor, and the courage of a soldier, and she was using all of it to save his life. When they reached the top of the ladder, they found themselves in a narrow maintenance space between floors. Through the metal grating, they could see the hit squad moving through the offices below, searching methodically. We can't stay here long, Amira whispered, but we can use this space to get to the roof access. The roof? Fire escape ladder on the north side. It connects to the building next door. As they crawled through the narrow space, Jisuk found himself studying Amira's face in the dim light filtering through the grating. She was focused, determined, completely in control of the situation. This was a woman who had been underestimated her entire life, and she was saving his. Amira, he said quietly. Yeah? Thank you. She paused and looked back at him. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. I'm not just talking about tonight. She held his gaze for a moment, and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond the immediate danger. I know, she said softly. Then they heard footsteps directly below them. The hit squad had found their trail. The footsteps below weren't random searching anymore. They were purposeful, directed. Someone was tracking their exact path through the building. They have thermal imaging, Jisuk realized, watching the organized movement through the grating. Then we need to move faster, Amira replied, but her voice carried a new tension. They crawled through the maintenance space as quickly as they could while staying silent, but the narrow passage limited their speed. Behind them, they could hear the hit squad accessing the same route they'd taken. There, Amira pointed ahead to where the passage opened into a larger mechanical room. We can reach the roof access from there. But as they emerged into the mechanical room, they found they weren't alone. A figure stood silhouetted against the emergency lighting, weapon drawn and aimed directly at them. Hello, cousin, the figure said in accented English. Jiseok's blood went cold. Taehyun, his own cousin, his second in command, the person he had trusted most in the world. I was wondering when you'd figure it out, Taehyun continued, stepping into the light. Though I have to admit I didn't expect you to bring a witness. His eyes shifted to Amira, and Jiseok instinctively moved to shield her. She's not part of this, Jiseok said. She is now. Taehyun's voice was cold, professional. Wrong place, wrong time. Why? Jiseok asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Because you've gone soft. This little game of playing janitor proves it. The old Jiseok would have sent soldiers to investigate. Instead, you're crawling around in maintenance uniforms, making friends with the help. Taehyun gestured dismissively toward Amira. Look at you now, hiding behind a receptionist, taking orders from someone who makes minimum wage. You've forgotten what power looks like. No, Amira said, her voice cutting through the tension. He's learned what real power looks like. Both men turned to stare at her. Real power doesn't come from making people fear you, she continued, stepping out from behind Jiseok. It comes from making people choose to follow you. And right now, I'm choosing to follow him because he's shown me more respect in 4 days than most people show me in a year. Taehyun laughed, but there was no humor in it. Respect? You think this is about respect? This is about survival, about maintaining control in a world that will destroy you the moment you show weakness. Then why are you the one who's destroying it? Amira shot back. If the organization is so important, why are you tearing it apart from the inside? The question hit its mark. Taehyun's confident facade cracked slightly. Because it's already broken, he said. Because he's already destroyed it with his weakness. I'm just finishing what he started. By hiring outsiders to kill family? Jiseok asked. By putting innocent people in danger? By betraying everything our grandfather built? Grandfather built this organization through strength and fear, Taehyun replied. You've turned it into a social club. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds. Taehyun had the advantage of position and firepower, but Amira had something else. She was studying the mechanical room with the same intensity she'd used to navigate the building. Jiseok, she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. The steam pipe behind him. It has a manual release valve. He followed her gaze and saw it, an old industrial steam system that probably hadn't been used in years, but the pipes were still under pressure. When I say now, hit the floor, she continued. What are you? Trust me. Before Taehyun could react, Amira lunged not toward the exit, but toward the wall where the steam valve was located. She grabbed the manual release and yanked it with all her strength. Superheated steam exploded from the pipe, filling the room with scalding vapor and creating instant chaos. Visibility dropped to 0, and the deafening hiss of escaping steam masked all other sounds. Now, Amira shouted. Jiseok dropped to the floor as Taehyun fired blindly through the steam cloud. But they were already moving, crawling toward the roof access while the room filled with hot vapor. They burst through the roof access door into the cold night air, both gasping and soaked with condensation. That was insane, Jiseok said, breathing hard. That was survival, Amira replied, already moving toward the fire escape she'd mentioned. But as they reached the edge of the roof, they realized their escape route was compromised. The fire escape ladder had been damaged. Whether by weather or sabotage, it was unusable. Now what? Jiseok asked. Amira looked around the rooftop, her mind working rapidly. There. She pointed to a maintenance bridge that connected to the adjacent building. It's not designed for people, but it should hold our weight. Should? You have a better idea. Behind them, they could hear Taehyun and his team emerging from the steam-filled mechanical room. Go, Jiseok said. I'll hold them off. No. Amira grabbed his arm. We go together, or we don't go at all. Amira. I said no, I don't abandon people, remember? The maintenance bridge was narrow and slippery from the rain, but they made it across just as Taehyun's team reached the roof. From the adjacent building, they could see the hit squad spreading out, searching for their trail. They'll keep looking, Jiseok said. Not if they think we're dead, Amira replied. What do you mean? She pointed to the damaged fire escape. If they think we tried to use that and fell, they might stop searching long enough for us to get real help. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their best option. Working together, they arranged debris near the damaged fire escape to make it look like someone had tried to use it and failed. Then they hid in the adjacent building's stairwell and waited. 20 minutes later, they heard Taehyun's voice through the radio chatter. Target eliminated. Clean up and withdraw. They had bought themselves time, but they both knew it wouldn't last long. Where can we go? Amira asked. If your own cousin betrayed you, who can you trust? It was a question that cut to the heart of everything. Jiseok's entire support network was compromised. His safe houses, his loyal contacts, his security protocols, all of it was known to Taehyun. There's one place, he said finally, someone who's completely outside the organization. Who? My grandmother. Amira stared at him. Your grandmother doesn't know what you do for a living. Oh, she knows, Ji-seok said with a small smile. She just doesn't approve. She's been telling me to change my life for years. And you think she'll help us? I think she'll help you, he said. She's always had a soft spot for people who need protection. As they made their way out of the building and into the night, Ji-seok realized that everything about this situation was unprecedented. He was running from his own organization, trusting a woman he'd known for less than a week, and planning to seek refuge with the one person who had never been impressed by his power or afraid of his reputation. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was making the right choice. Amira, he said as they walked through the empty streets. Yeah? When this is over, when we're safe. I want to tell you everything. About who I really am, what I've done, why I ended up in that building pretending to be someone else. And I want to listen, she replied. But I also want you to listen to me, about who I really am, what I've survived, why I ended up working nights just to keep my family together. Deal. They walked in comfortable silence for several blocks, two people from completely different worlds who had found something unexpected in each other. Trust, understanding, and the beginning of something that neither of them had been looking for, but both of them desperately needed. Mrs. Han lived in a modest house 40 minutes outside the city, in a neighborhood where the biggest crime was teenagers skateboarding too late at night. When she opened the door at 3 a.m. to find her grandson and a soaked black woman on her doorstep, she didn't ask questions. She just ushered them inside. "Ji-seok ah," she said in Korean, then immediately switched to English for Amira's benefit. "You look terrible, both of you. Sit down, I'll make tea." As his grandmother bustled around the small kitchen, Ji-seok found himself in the surreal position of explaining his criminal life to someone who had always existed completely outside it. "So, your cousin wants to kill you because he thinks you're weak?" Mrs. Han asked after hearing the abbreviated version of events. "Essentially, yes. And you," she turned to Amira, "you saved his life even though you barely know him." "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Han nodded approvingly. "Good. He needs someone with sense around him. Grandmother, don't grandmother me. I've been telling you for years that your life is wrong. Maybe now you'll listen." She set down cups of tea and fixed Ji-seok with a stern look. "This girl has more wisdom in her little finger than you have in your whole organization. She sees what you refuse to see." "What's that?" Amira asked. "That power without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen," Mrs. Han replied. "And that real strength comes from protecting people, not controlling them." As they sat in the warm kitchen, surrounded by family photos and the smell of ginger tea, Ji-seok felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the temporary absence of conflict that came from winning battles, but actual peace. "Tell me about your family," Mrs. Han said to Amira. "It's just me and my brother now," Amira replied. "Our parents died 2 years ago. Marcus is 17, a senior in high school. He's brilliant, wants to study engineering." "And you work nights to support him?" "I work whenever I can get shifts. Nights pay better, and it means I'm home when he gets back from school." "Mrs." Han studied Amira's face with the sharp eyes of someone who had raised 5 children and buried 2 husbands. "You're tired," she said simply. "Not just from tonight, from carrying everything alone." Amira's composure cracked slightly. "Some days I don't know how much longer I can do it," she admitted. "The bills keep coming. Marcus needs things for school. And I'm always one emergency away from losing everything." "What kind of emergency?" Ji-seok asked quietly. "Any kind. If I get sick and can't work. If Marcus gets hurt and needs medical care. If the car breaks down and I can't get to my job. If the landlord decides to raise the rent." She shrugged. "When you're poor, everything is an emergency waiting to happen." The casual way she described living on the edge of disaster hit Ji-seok like a physical blow. He spent more on a single dinner than she probably made in a week, and she was supporting an entire family on that income. "What about government assistance?" Mrs. Han asked. "I make just enough to not qualify for most programs, but not enough to actually live comfortably," Amira explained. "It's like being stuck in the middle. Too much income for help, too little income for stability." "That's not right," Mrs. Han said firmly. "No, it's not, but it's reality for a lot of people." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of systemic inequality settling over the conversation. "We can't stay here long," Ji-seok said eventually. "It's not safe for you, grandmother. Nowhere is safe until you deal with this cousin of yours," Mrs. Han replied. "And you can't deal with him the old way." "What do you mean?" "If you kill him, you prove his point, that you're just another violent criminal. If you want to be different, you have to be different." Amira leaned forward. "She's right. Violence just creates more violence. But exposure, that's different." "Exposure? Your cousin betrayed you because he thinks he can get away with it. What if he couldn't? What if everyone in your organization knew exactly what he did and why?" Ji-seok considered this. In the criminal world, betrayal was often handled quietly, internally. But public exposure of treachery was a different kind of justice, one that would make Tae-hyun's position untenable without making Ji-seok look weak. "That would require proof," he said. "We have proof," Amira replied. "The building has security cameras. The attack was recorded. And I'm willing to testify about what I saw. That would put you in danger. I'm already in danger. But this way, we end it instead of just postponing it." Mrs. Han stood up and walked to an old wooden cabinet in the corner of the kitchen. She returned with a small photo album and set it on the table. "Look at this," she said, opening to a page with old family photos. The pictures showed a much younger Ji-seok with his parents and Tae-hyun's family, holiday gatherings, birthday parties, casual moments of childhood happiness. "You two were inseparable," Mrs. Han said, pointing to a photo of young Ji-seok and Tae-hyun building a snowman together. "Tae-hyun looked up to you like a big brother." "What happened?" Amira asked. "Power," Mrs. Han said simply. When Ji-seok's father died and he inherited the organization, everything changed. Tae-hyun expected to be treated as an equal, but he was still seen as the younger cousin. "So this is about jealousy?" Amira asked. "This is about a family that forgot how to be a family," Mrs. Han replied, "about men who confused fear with respect, control with leadership." She closed the photo album and looked directly at her grandson. "You have a choice now, Ji-seok. You can continue the cycle. Violence, betrayal, more violence. Or you can break it. How? By being the man your parents raised you to be, not the man your circumstances forced you to become." Amira reached across the table and touched Ji-seok's hand. "What did you want to be?" she asked. "Before all this, when you were the kid in those photos." Ji-seok stared at the closed photo album, remembering a version of himself he'd almost forgotten. "A teacher," he said quietly. "I wanted to teach history. I loved learning about how societies changed, how people overcame impossible circumstances." "You still could," Amira said, "with my background, my reputation. With your resources and your intelligence, and your understanding of how power really works," she replied. "You could teach people how to change things, how to build something better." The idea was so foreign to everything he'd known for the past decade that it took his breath away. "That's a beautiful dream," he said. "But first, we have to survive the next 24 hours. "Then let's focus on that," Amira said. "But let's do it the right way. Your grandmother is right. If you want to be different, you have to be different." As they planned their next move, Ji-seok realized that everything about this situation was unprecedented. He was taking advice from his grandmother and a receptionist. He was choosing exposure over violence. He was trusting people outside his organization, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt like he was making the right choice. "There's something else," Amira said as they prepared to leave Mrs. Han's house. "When this is over, what happens to us?" The question hung in the air between them. "What do you want to happen?" he asked. "I want to know who you really are," she said. "Not the Mafia boss, not the janitor. You, and I want you to know who I really am too." "I already know who you are," he said softly. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." "Then prove it," she replied. "Show me that you can be strong enough to change." Mrs. Han watched this exchange with the satisfied expression of someone who had seen many love stories begin in her kitchen. "You two are going to be fine," she said. "But first, you need to finish this business with Tae-hyun." "Any advice?" Ji-seok asked. "Yes," his grandmother replied. "Remember that he's family. Even if he's forgotten it, you don't have to." The confrontation came 2 days later, not in a dark alley or abandoned warehouse, but in the conference room of Ji-seok's legitimate business front, a security consulting company that occupied 2 floors of a downtown office building. Ji-seok had called a meeting of his 5 top lieutenants, ostensibly to discuss the recent security breaches. Tae-hyun arrived confident, believing his cousin was still in the dark about his betrayal. What he didn't expect was to find Amira sitting at the conference table, a laptop open in front of her, connected to a large screen on the wall. "What is she doing here?" Tae-hyun demanded. "Miss Cole is here as a witness," Ji-seok replied calmly. "She has information relevant to our security concerns." The other lieutenants, Park Min-woo, Lee Sang-ho, Kim Dong-hyun, and Choi Jung-kook, looked confused but remained seated. In their world, Ji-seok's word was law, even when his decisions seemed unusual. "Gentlemen," Ji-seok began, "we have a traitor in our organization, someone who has been selling information about our operations to rival factions, someone who hired a professional hit squad to eliminate me." The room erupted in angry voices, demands for names, promises of retribution. But Tae-hyun remained silent, his face carefully neutral. "The evidence is clear," Ji-seok continued, nodding to Amira. She clicked a key and the conference room screen filled with security footage from the office building. The timestamp showed the night of the attack, and the video clearly showed Tae-hyun entering the building through the service entrance, disabling security systems and coordinating with the hit squad. "This footage was recovered from the building's backup security system," Amira explained, her voice steady and professional. "The primary system was disabled, but the backup continued recording to an off-site server." The room fell silent as they watched Tae-hyun's betrayal play out on screen. His coordination with the attackers, his knowledge of the building's layout, his clear leadership role in the operation. It was all there, undeniable. "You set me up," Tae-hyun said, his composure finally cracking. "No," Ji-seok replied. "You set yourself up. I just made sure everyone could see it." "This changes nothing," Tae-hyun snarled. "You're still weak. This proves it. Hiding behind a woman, using technology instead of strength, exposing family business to outsiders." "You're right," Ji-seok said, standing up. "This does prove something about me. It proves that I'm strong enough to change, strong enough to choose justice over revenge, strong enough to trust people outside our world when they show more honor than people within it." He walked around the table to stand directly in front of his cousin. "And it proves that I'm strong enough to say these words. You're finished. Not because I'm killing you, but because everyone now knows what you are. You have no allies, no support, no future in this organization or any other." Tae-hyun looked around the room at the faces of the other lieutenants. He saw disgust, anger, and rejection. In the criminal world, betraying family was the ultimate sin. "This isn't over," he said, backing toward the door. "Yes, it is," Amira said, speaking for the first time since presenting the evidence, "because unlike you, we're not hiding in the shadows anymore." But Tae-hyun had one last card to play. As he reached the door, he pulled out his phone and showed them a photo that made Ji-seok's blood run cold. It was Marcus, Amira's brother, sitting in what looked like the back of a van. "Insurance policy," Tae-hyun said with a cold smile. "The boy is safe, Tata, for now. But if I don't check in with my associates every hour, that changes." Amira shot to her feet, her face a mask of fury and terror. "Where is he?" "Somewhere safe, somewhere you'll never find him without my help." The room exploded into chaos. The lieutenants reached for weapons, but Ji-seok held up a hand to stop them. "What do you want?" he asked. "Safe passage out of the city, a clean start somewhere else, and a guarantee that you won't come after me. And if I refuse, then the boy dies and you live with the knowledge that your weakness killed an innocent kid." Amira stepped forward, her voice deadly calm. "You made a mistake, Tae-hyun." "What mistake?" "You assumed I was helpless. You assumed I didn't have resources of my own. You assumed wrong." She pulled out her own phone and showed him a photo that made his confident expression falter. It was a picture of the van he was using, taken from a security camera with a clear view of the license plate and the street location. "How did you—" "Because while you were planning this meeting, I was tracking every vehicle registered to your known associates," Amira said. "Because I spent the last 2 days learning everything I could about your operation, and because I called in a favor with someone who has access to the city's traffic camera network." She looked directly at him. "My brother is smart, Tae-hyun. Smart enough to activate the emergency app on his phone before your people grabbed him. Smart enough to leave a digital trail that led me right to him." The confidence drained from Tae-hyun's face as he realized his leverage was gone. The police are already en route to that location, Amira continued. Your associates will be arrested, my brother will be safe, and you'll have nothing left to bargain with. You're bluffing. Am I? As if on cue, Taehyun's phone rang. He answered it, and everyone in the room could hear the panicked voice on the other end, reporting that police had surrounded their location. It's over, cousin, Ji-seok said quietly. But Taehyun wasn't finished. In a last desperate move, he lunged toward Amira, pulling a concealed weapon. He never made it. Ji-seok moved faster than anyone in the room had ever seen him move, intercepting Taehyun and disarming him in a single fluid motion. But instead of retaliating with violence, he simply held his cousin in an immobilizing grip. I could kill you right now, Ji-seok said, his voice barely above a whisper. And everyone in this room would understand why. But I'm not going to. Why not? Because someone taught me that real strength isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you choose to build. He looked at Amira, then back at his cousin. You're going to leave this city tonight, and you're never coming back. If I see you again, if you threaten anyone I care about again, if you even think about revenge, then we'll finish this conversation differently. Taehyun stared at him in shock. You're letting me go. I'm giving you the chance to be better than what you've become. What you do with that chance is up to you. After Taehyun left, escorted by 2 lieutenants who would ensure he reached the city limits, the remaining men looked at their boss with new eyes. Sir, Park Min-woo said carefully, what about the organization? What about our operations? Ji-seok looked around the room, then at Amira. Things are going to change, Come-in, he said. We're going to become what we've always claimed to be, a legitimate security consulting firm. No more gray areas, no more questionable clients, no more operating in the shadows. And if people think we've gone soft, Lee Sang-ho asked. Then they'll underestimate us, Amira said, speaking up, and that will be their mistake. The meeting ended with more questions than answers, but also with something the organization had never had before, a clear moral direction. After everyone left, Ji-seok and Amira sat alone in the conference room. Your brother? He asked. Safe. The police got him out 20 minutes ago. He's probably at home wondering why his boring Tuesday turned into an action movie. And you? Are you okay? She was quiet for a long moment. I've never been in a situation like that before, she said finally, where someone's life depended on me keeping my head clear and making the right choices. You were incredible. I was terrified, but I was also angry, and anger can make you very focused. What happens now? He asked. Now we figure out what comes next, she replied. You offered me a job earlier. I'm accepting, but with conditions. Name them. First, no illegal activities in any operation I'm involved with. Second, fair wages for all employees, not just management. Third, community investment. We give back to neighborhoods like the one I come from. Done, Ji-seok said without hesitation. Just like that. Just like that. She studied his face. You know this changes everything, right? Your organization, your reputation, your entire way of operating. I know, he said. Are you ready for that? Are you? She countered. He thought about the question seriously. Was he ready to transform his organization from a criminal enterprise into something legitimate? Was he ready to be seen as weak by some of his peers? Was he ready to build something new with a woman who challenged everything he thought he knew about power? I've been invisible my whole life, he said finally, hidden behind fear and violence and control. You made me visible, to myself and to others. I'm ready to be seen. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Then let's build something worth seeing. He reached across the table and took her hand, interlacing their fingers slowly. Together? Together? As they sat in the conference room where his old life had officially ended, Ji-seok realized that Amira had been right from the beginning. Rich people didn't see the people who kept their world running, but she had made him see, not just her, but himself. And now, finally, he was ready to be worthy of what she saw in him. There's one more thing, Amira said. What's that? When you said you wanted to be a teacher, I meant what I said. You still could. Maybe not in a traditional classroom, but you could teach people about change, about building something better. And you could finish your degree, he replied. Become the teacher you wanted to be. We could do it together, build something that helps people instead of controlling them. The idea was so different from everything he'd known that it felt like stepping into a completely new world. But as he looked at Amira, brilliant, brave, uncompromising Amira, he realized that maybe a new world was exactly what he needed. Korean Mafia boss disguised himself as a janitor and froze upon hearing the words of the poor receptionist, he said, smiling at the absurdity of it all. "What?" she asked. "That's what the headline would be if this was a movie." "And what would the ending be?" "The ending would be that they both stopped being invisible. They both stopped hiding, and they both discovered that being seen, really seen by the right person, is the most powerful thing in the world." Years later, the office building where they first met had been transformed into a community center. The corporate lobby, where Amira once worked night shifts, now housed a job training program, a childcare center and a small cafe that employed people from the neighborhood. JANITOR's security company had evolved into a comprehensive community development organization. They still provided security services, but they also offered job training, educational programs, and small business loans to people who had been overlooked by traditional institutions. Amira had finished her degree and now ran the educational programs while working on her master's in social work. Her brother Marcus had graduated from engineering school and designed the community center's technology systems as his senior project. The transformation hadn't been easy. Some of JANITOR's former associates had called him weak, naive, idealistic. Some of Amira's old co-workers had accused her of selling out, of forgetting where she came from. But they had built something real together. Something that created opportunities instead of destroying them. Something that lifted people up instead of keeping them down. On quiet evenings, they would sometimes walk through the old lobby, remembering the night that changed everything. "Do you ever miss it?" Amira asked one evening. "The power, the fear, the control?" "No," JANITOR said without hesitation. "I was never really powerful when I was invisible. Real power is being seen, being known, being chosen by someone who knows exactly who you are." She squeezed his hand. "You know what I realized?" she said. "What?" "That night when I said nobody sees us, I was wrong. You saw me. Even when you were pretending to be someone else, you saw me." "And you saw me," he replied. "The real me. Underneath everything I thought I needed to be." They stopped in front of the old reception desk, now repurposed as an information center for community services. A young woman sat behind it, helping an elderly man fill out paperwork for the job training program. "She reminds me of you," JANITOR said, watching the receptionist patiently explain the application process. "She reminds me of who I used to be," Amira replied, "before I knew I had choices." "Everyone has choices," JANITOR said. "Some people just need help seeing them." "Is that what we're doing here? Helping people see their choices?" "Among other things." Amira turned to face him, her eyes bright with the kind of hope that comes from seeing dreams become reality. Korean Mafia boss disguised himself as a janitor and froze upon hearing the words of the poor receptionist, she said, laughing softly. "What?" JANITOR asked. "That's what the headline would be if this was a movie." "And what would the ending be?" "The ending would be that they both stopped being invisible. They both stopped hiding, and they both discovered that being seen, really seen by the right person, is the most powerful thing in the world." He kissed her then, in the lobby where they'd first met, surrounded by the community they'd built together. And for the first time in either of their lives, they were exactly where they belonged. Thank you for staying until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has countless more passionate and transformative stories waiting for you. Subscribe to our channel and help us continue bringing these incredible tales of love, redemption, and second chances that will keep you captivated.